Hey everyone, it's Devin Sheets with Alpha Sound. I'm going to do a more in-depth review today of the DPA 4055 kick drum microphone and the Audix D6, which everyone's familiar with. We used them at an event this last weekend, our second time using them, side by side in the kick drums all weekend long. So what most people might do for a review like this is go into a studio and put the two mics inside the kick drum and then post the raw stems online for you to listen to in isolation, and that's fine. I'll do that as well, but I also want you to hear it through a sound system. So I have behind me a Nexo sound system similar to what we use there. We've got the Nexo S118 subwoofers with a P15 top. We have a binaural microphone that we're going to be listening to it through. So if you put on really good studio headphones with lots of bass, you'll be able to roughly hear what it sounds like through an actual PA system. Now I've muted the master out for just a minute and we can see both kick drum channels playing, and what you'll notice is that the 4055 input is a little bit hotter than the D6. And this is interesting because I actually recorded this after having adjusted the gains on the console to where they sounded the same, switching back and forth through the PA system the day of the show. So first, let's listen to the raw input channels from the console. So next, let's listen to them through the sound system, beginning with the DPA 4055. Switching over to the D6. Back to the 4055. Back to the D6. All right, example number 2. A youth rock group, beginning with the 4055. Switching over to the D6. Back to the DPA. I think you can hear a bit more ambient noise through the DPA than the D6. Switching back. Back to the DPA. Seems to have a more accurate sound in my opinion. Back to the D6. The D6 certainly has a certain sound to it, you know. Okay, coming up on our third example here, a very professional blues band, beginning with the DPA 4055. Switching to the D6. Back to the 4055. Back to the D6. Again, like I say, these sounded about the same volume through the main PA, switching back and forth all evening long. 4055. D6. And for our fourth and final example, we have a pretty heavy-hitting rock band, beginning with the 4055. Switching to the D6. A lot less ambient noise. Back to the 4055. Seems to be a more accurate sound, just sounds cleaner. Also a bit more really low frequency. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can feel it standing next to the rig. All that stuff below 40 hertz. Back to the D6. The D6 has a certain sound to it. And back to the 4055. That's just like the most amazing kick drum sound. Even just standing here in the parking lot, it's incredible. So a lot of people might think that I had the 4055 a little bit louder than the D6. It certainly did sound like that during this test. I chose to leave it that way because the input levels were actually what sounded the same in the actual mix at the show. Now, I don't know what this means, but take it for what it's worth. So I should also add that in my original video review of these two microphones, I did an isolated gain before feedback test in which I had both microphones' gains set the same, and I found at the time that the D6 had about 12 decibels more gain before feedback than the 4055. After having used it for 2 events now, I found that the D6 needs to be gained up maybe 7 or 8 decibels in order to sound about the same as the 4055 in the mix. And with that compensation added to the isolated gain before feedback test, the D6, I feel, maybe has about 4 decibels more than the 4055. But the 4055 has a lot more ambient noise as well, so there is this in the balance of things. So overall, my assessment has pretty much stayed the same as the first review. I think that the DPA definitely sounds cleaner, tighter. I mean, you decide. But if you want the sort of ultimate kick drum sound, I would have the DPA on hand. I would use it first, and if you have to switch to the D6 because you run into gain before feedback issues or ambient noise issues, definitely still have the D6 around. Don't get rid of it. So I think at this point in time, if you can afford it, the responsible engineer will have both on hand.